Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Well, it's a new year one, and I'm super excited to welcome all three of you lovely ladies. I'm happy we have many sisters in the class this year, it looks like, so that's great. And welcome aboard. And as I said before, usually we're full of brothers, and so it's good to have some sisters also pursuing religious education in our Unity Hawza. And today is our very first class of the academic year 2023-24. And the way that this works is we actually have 4 years of classes in the Hawza. In other words, our curriculum goes over 4 years. And after the 4th year, you're eligible to apply for ijaza, which means a permission to actually teach the material yourself, okay? And the way to get there is by going through all the 4 years. And I'll explain it in a little bit more detail as we go forward. But just so you kind of know where you've landed, what we're all about, what we do is we offer a year 1 class based on the teachings of Sayyid Mehdi Imam Razvi, alayhi salam. He's my lovely teacher. He's a Sayyid, descendant of the Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we're going to talk a lot about, I'm going to introduce you a lot about Imam Razvi, alayhi salam, today. So you get the picture of, what is the background that when we teach here, where we're coming from, because this is essentially his teaching that is living forward, if you will, living into the future, inshallah. And so we'll look at Imam Razvi a lot today. We'll look at how the Hawza curriculum is built over the next 4 years. And from there, we'll advance and actually, hopefully, describe this particular year 1 class in its entirety. Then today, we'll tell you how the class is going to go and what the structure of the class is. And then I'd actually like to go through one principle today, the main principle of the 10 principles, I might say. And there might be a surprise 11th principle at the end of the year. So stay tuned. We have an 11th principle coming. But I'm not going to divulge that just yet, so you'll have to bear with me and come to class. And so Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So why don't I actually share the screen, and let's see what I can find here. I think this is the principle 1, and this is the principle 8. So what we're going to want to do is, I see I need to open that. Okay, so let me open that file first. The first thing I'm going to do is, this is about Islamic philosophy. We have, by the way, we have Islamic philosophy as our year 3 class. So if you make it past the we have Salim entering. That's great. So we do have a boy. We do have a gentleman joining us. Okay. All right. That's great. Salim is our friend from Hamburg. Our dear brother from Hamburg. So he's my neighbor, somehow, as a matter of fact. So it's good to have Salim John. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
How are you, dear sir? How's life?
I'm good. And yes, it's Sunday, and today a little bit more relaxed. So
yes.
Alhamdulillah, it's all good, and I look forward for the today's class, of course.
Yeah, we're all excited. I was just celebrating the fact that we have a lot of sisters in this class this year, which is very nice. And of course, it's lovely to have all of you. And Salim and I are both based here in Hamburg, Germany, so it's great to have a local member of the Hawza also with us, not just Australia, Alberta, Iran, this place. Yeah, it's 6 in the morning, Jana, right? Exactly. You've really done a great job. And I didn't even remind you, so you did great. So I'm really proud of you. So thank you for joining us as well. So I think we're all on board. Just as I was saying, Salim John, to everyone. So today we're going to talk about how the Hawza is built up in general, in terms of the curriculum for 4 years, and also a lot we're going to talk about Imam Razvi alayhi salam. I'm having some funny lighting issues. I have the beautiful sun coming in from the front, which means I need to get a light in the back, I think. Then we're going to talk about Imam Razvi alayhi salam and his legacy in Hamburg, which I'm sure you've been to the Blue Mosque here in Hamburg, so you can testify, a lot about the legacy of Imam Razvi alayhi salam. And then we will actually go into year one as a structure, and I'll actually be teaching you one of the principles today of Islam, the very first and the most important principle as far as I'm concerned, and the first one that Imam Razvi taught me also, alayhi salam. So I think it works in a good combination. Okay, so we're all on board now. So I'm going to see if I can share my screen. And indeed, this looks like it could work. Okay, so if you see my screen, please tell me that you can see my screen somehow.
We
Okay,
can
I've
see
got a thumbs up.
Yes.
Yeah, that's great. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So what we're teaching this year in year one is what in Arabic is called usul ad-din. So it means the roots of the religion, okay? Some people call it the manhaj, okay? There's also another Arabic term for this, which is the manhaj. In many ways, Sayyid Mehdi Imam Razvi has been linked to different aspects of religion, depending on whom you speak with. So if you speak with the very legalistic people, they will say, yes, Imam Razvi alayhi salam was a Zaydi Imam from India, based in Hamburg. If you speak with the philosophers, they will say he was an Ishraqi philosopher, which Ishraq means light or nur, or somehow following the traditions of Maulana Shahabuddin Suhrawardi as-Shahid, many of whom you may have already encountered. On your path, we'll be talking a lot about Maulana Suhrawardi alayhi salam in year 3 in Islamic philosophy, okay? And if you speak with the Sufis or with the mystics, then they will know Imam Razvi alayhi salam as a Chishti Shaykh. Chishtiya is a very famous tariqah or Sufi order based in the subcontinent, okay? And when I say the Asian subcontinent, I'm talking about India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and this part of the world, yeah? So you get a feeling of what culture that Imam Razvi alayhi salam comes from, emerges during his lifetime, yeah? So to limit Imam Razvi, let's say, only to Zaydiya is false. But to take away the Zaydi aspect of Imam Razvi is also false, yeah? So we testify that his legacy is based on the manhaj of Imam Zayd alayhi salam, and it finds expression through the fruits of philosophy. It's not only to say Sheikh Suhrawardi alayhi salam, it's also Mullah Sadruddin Shirazi, and it's also really the entire ocean of Islamic philosophy is where you'll find Imam Razvi alayhi salam. And the reason for that is because of the high position of wisdom and philosophy and reason in his concept of Islam. And this is something that will continue to accompany us throughout year one, throughout the entire Usul ad-Din. We'll always be falling back on reason and falling back on wisdom and falling back on philosophy, as well as mysticism. So all of these things in the picture of Imam Razvi make a complete mosaic, if you will, a complete picture. And it's wrong to just focus on one aspect, just as it's wrong to take one aspect away. Okay, so that's why we have a 4-year curriculum. We have Sohail John is entering. That's great. So that's we're getting another brother. So we're starting to find balance here. I was the chicken in the basket for a few minutes, but that didn't last too long. So now we've got 3 brothers and 3 sisters. So Sohail John, inshallah, you are with us, and you can hear us. Okay, that's great. Jana was telling me that she can see the screen. That's great. Sohail John, are you with us? Can you hear us? I see he's connecting to audio. We're going to find out where Sohail is based, if he's in Pakistan or if he's in London. I don't quite remember. But let's hope that his internet connection holds up. Okay. And while we wait for Sohail John to join us, so as I said, so it's just as it would be incorrect to focus only on one aspect of Imam Razvi alayhi salam, so it would also be wrong to take away any aspect from Imam Razvi. So we have to see the balance, al-mizan. We have to see the balance of the life and the teachings of Imam Razvi alayhi salam, okay? And Sohail, I hope you can hear us now. I'm seeing that you came in. Okay, we can't hear you, but feel free to chat or to let us know that you're here by raising a hand or chatting in the chat. Okay, so I see a chat there. I'm a 12er. This is all, yeah. This is all uncharted territory for me. Should be interesting. Absolutely, Jana. So what I want to point out is that this idea of madhab in the sense of, you know, I'm a Jafari Shia, which is also called 12er, or I'm a Zaidi Shia, you know, which is called Fiver, but incorrectly called Fiver. We're going to explain why in a moment. Or I'm Ismaili Shia, or even I'm Hanafi Muslim or Maliki Muslim, you know, Sunni Muslim in some form. Even these things, our main united point here, or why we call this the unity Hawza, is because we all converge on the Hadith al-Thaqalain, which, as you may know from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, I leave you with two things, or I bequeath two things upon you. One is the Holy Quran al-Kareem, and one is the Ahlul Bayt, okay? Alayhum as-salam ajma'in. So these are the two things that we bequeath upon you. And whether you're Hanafi and you love the Ahlul Bayt, whether you're Maliki and you love the Ahlul Bayt, okay? Many people don't know that Imam Abu Hanifa, Qudus as-Siratu alayh, actually took classes for 2 years with Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. And he said to me that if it weren't for the 2 years that I took classes with Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, I could never have become the person that I became. My teachings could never have been perfected in the way that they were perfected, alayhi salam. Yeah, and also Imam Malik is known to have taken classes from Sadiq as well. He lived in Medina, of course, and so he was able to take classes with Sadiq as well, alayhi salam. And you'll see also that even Imam Shafi'i, who has been, you know, some of us who are a little bit closer to Shia Islam, we say that Imam Shafi'i has been misused by many of his followers because he indeed had always crystallized the love of the value of the 12 Imam of the Ahlul Bayt, alayhum as-salam ajma'in, as did Imam Razvi. So Imam Razvi also crystallized the love for the 12 Imams of the Ahlul Bayt, alayhum as-salam ajma'in. And the Zaydi perspective on Imamiyat is a little bit different than the 12er aspects. And so we'll be getting into that a little bit more deeply as time comes out. So it's great to see Sohail is with us, and he says he comes from a 12er background. However, there are many aspects, or however, there are aspects of 12er-ism which are just my cup of tea. And so, yeah, so definitely we can talk about all of these things in the course of the Hawza this year. We'll have a lot of opportunity. Please remember to block on your calendars the 4th Sunday of every month, okay? At 2 p.m. Hamburg, which is 8 a.m. New York, and 10 p.m. in Australia. So for those suffering the night shift over there, like Sister Rachel, we really appreciate that you join us even at the latest hours, yeah? And also Jana from really, really early morning way over there in Alberta, Canada, for waking up with the reindeer in Canada to join us today, yeah? So yeah, we can talk about, you know, differences between Zaydi Islam, 12er Islam, and so on, and also Sunni Islam, Zaydi Islam, because the way that we position Zaydi Islam, as we call it Sushi Islam, okay? Why is it Sushi? Because we take certain elements from Sunni Islam and we take certain elements of Shia Islam, and we do consider ourselves to be Shi'i. So there's no question in terms of the following of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that we do believe that the haqq is with Imam Ali alayhi salam and with the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt, alayhum as-salam ajma'in. And on the feminine side, of course, with Hazrat Fatima alayhi salam and all of the dear mothers and aunts and sisters and daughters that have emerged from the line of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Hazrat Zainab, Hazrat Fatima Masumeh, Hazrat Khadija, his lovely wife of 25 years, and alayhum as-salam ajma'in, to all the lovely ladies of the Ahlul Bayt. Okay, and so it's really important that that we recognize the haqq of Imam Ali as being a main principle for Zaydi Islam. Okay, nevertheless, there are some things that we don't do, and we'll get into that a little bit later, which separate us a little bit from what's commonly called Twelver Islam or Jafari Islam. But we'll get into all those differences a little bit later on along the line. We have a whole year, so we'll make sure to pace ourselves and go step by step. Okay. One main difference is that we believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent an imam for every generation. At least one imam is always present as a guidance for us in today's world. So every generation until the emergence of Imam Mahdi az-Zaman alayhi salam, Nurun ala Nur alayhi salam, it is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has committed to sending an imam for each generation. Of course, the imams that he sends for each generation don't necessarily have the same, let's say, we don't want to belittle them either, because they are the imams of our time. But of course, we also don't compare them with Imam Ali alayhi salam, or we don't compare them with Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. We don't say it's the same level like imamat, yeah? But what we do say, it's imam in the sense of a guiding light for our generation. And sometimes indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, according to the Zaydi philosophy, has sent, even at the same time, has sent different imams in different regions, okay? Some examples are like the family of Imam Qasim al-Rasi alayhi salam, who had two brothers that were, fighting the Umayyads and the Abbasids at the same time. He was teaching in Misr, in Egypt, and doing his great work there and leaving this great legacy of Zaydi Islam. So we see that in every generation there have been imams from Zaydi Islam, and they have continued this tradition through 1400 years of Islam. And Sohail is coming back in, so let's let him back in. And so this is one of the major differences, let's say, because of the Jafari Muslims, the Shia 12er Muslims are tendentially, they're waiting for Imam Mahdi to come back from what's called occultation, or to come back from his, occultation is a good word, hiding, but not in the sense of hiding from fear, but hiding for mystical purposes, or hiding for what you can call eschatological purposes, okay? This is hard to explain without using a little bit of vocabulary, so I'm going to use the word eschatological and explain it to those who may not be familiar with it. So eschatology is the science in religion of the cause and existence, how the world came into creation. And I'm just going to let some people in. I see Sohail joining twice, which means he's probably having a hard time getting in. Let's do our best. So eschatology is basically the science of the deen, or the religion, in terms of how this existence came into being, what is upholding this existence, who are the main responsible figures in human history to uphold this existence, and how will this existence finally come to a close, and what is the next step of human existence. On the collective level and on the individual level, eschatology is, how do we as an individual, how are we born? How do we go from being a drop and a cell to becoming a fetus and an embryo and a fetus and essentially in the womb of the mother, Ar-Rahm, the womb. Okay, so for those who are wondering, what's the root word of Rahman? It's Ar-Rahm, which means the womb of the mother. And how do we go from being within the womb of the mother to birthing and becoming this human being? And finally, what will happen to us afterward when we pass from the dunya into the akhirat, into the barzakh, and hopefully, inshallah, into the jannat. If our right hand deeds are heavier than our left, and perhaps into the duzakh or into Jahannam, if our deeds on the left hand outweigh the right. Inshallah, wallahu a'lam. So this is the science of eschatology. Okay? And when we talk about eschatology, we see this so-called eschatological difference then between Zaydi Islam and Jafari Islam, okay? Which is not to say that Imam Zayd and Imam Ja'far, alayhum as-salam, had this difference between them, because they knew, for certain they knew, but their students who developed these madhahib, they maybe went their different directions, and they had their discussions of who is the right imam and who is not the right imam and things like this. And you know how, if you ever watch from outside how these kind of religious groups develop, you will see very quickly that after the teacher passes, the students tend to go in different directions, and because no student could possibly obtain and grasp all of the knowledge of the teacher. Only the teacher could have that knowledge. It's just a fact of life. It's nothing to mourn over. It is what it is, as the young generation likes to say. So this is just to show you maybe very quickly one difference between the Zaydi Shia and the Jafari Shia. And indeed, as Jana is asking us, Jana has asked us in the chat whether this is similar to Ismaili Shiism. And indeed it is. The Ismailis also have an unbroken chain of imams going all the way back to Hazrat Ismail alayhi salam. The younger brother of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. So indeed, and there are also, you'll notice that there are different also Ismaili groups, yeah? So you have the Nizaris with the Akhan, but you also have Taibis, and you have different groups particularly in the Indian subcontinent or the Asian subcontinent. You'll find different groups of Ismaili Shia as well, yeah? And in Central Asia, dispersed through Central Asia. As far as the Zaydis are concerned, you'll find Zaydis mainly today located in the Yemen, but you'll also find Zaydi strands in Iran, and you'll find them in the Central Asia and in the Asian subcontinent, the Indian subcontinent, if I may. And you'll find them in North Africa, particularly in Morocco. So actually the founder of the current present state of Morocco, if you will, the kingdom, Mulay Idris, as they like to call him in Morocco, alayhi salam, was actually a Zaydi Imam. And many people don't know this, that the kingdom of Morocco was founded by a Zaydi Imam who was essentially fleeing in the time from the persecution of the Bani Umayyah, and ended up gathering steam and followers in Northern Africa and carving out the nascent kingdom of Morocco at the time. So those who are interested in the history of North Africa and particularly of Morocco, you'll find, if you look deeply and if you're willing to open your eyes and your mind, that in fact the kingdom of Morocco was grounded by a Zaydi Imam who was in opposition to Bani Umayyah. Okay, so Zaydiya, and of course now in Hamburg, Germany, we're also proud to have the legacy of Imam Razvi alayhi salam. So closing back full circle, going into why we're called the Unity Hawza. It's exactly for this, because we want to unite the Muslims. This is a big challenge of ours. It's a big, important challenge of our generation. You might say it's the jihad of our generation, okay? Is to unite the Muslims and stop all this bickering and buggering and all the nonsense that keeps us divided, rather than coming together as one, inshallah, and owning the responsibility, owning the inheritance of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam ajma'in. Okay, so to own this inheritance, or to somehow feel the haqq of this inheritance on our shoulders, we've considered it imperative to reach out to our fellow dear Muslims and teach them about the commonalities of the different madhahib and the beauty of the philosophy of Islam and the mysticism, the levels of mystic perception that can be obtained by following the Islamic path, inshallah. Wallahu a'lam. So that's why the name Unity Hawza. And of course, it's according to Sayyid Mahdi Imam Razvi alayhi salam. And that would give us the chance now to jump into Sayyid Mahdi Imam Razvi alayhi salam, his teachings as a man, as a vision, as his influence and his teachings. And I'll just go into his personal background in a moment. There are a couple of comments in the chat. I knew I liked Morocco for a reason. Yeah, that's new info for me. Yeah, I had the pleasure of going to Morocco, it must be almost 30 years ago now, just with a backpack and a dream. And I loved Morocco. I really loved it. I had some wonderful mystical experiences, including with the Ganawi Tariqa in Marrakesh, dancing with the Sufis until something like 6 in the morning. So if you thought that raves were an invention from New York City, nope. They've been doing it in Sufi Islam for now 1400 years. Yeah. So yeah, Morocco is absolutely incredible, a very mystical place, Morocco, very magical, very intuitive place. I really encourage, and it's sufficiently Western that we Westerners, those who are Westerners like me, they can show up in Morocco and still feel connected somehow, not completely discombobulated by going there. So I really recommend someone who wants to be introduced into the Islamic world. Morocco is a great first step. Okay, Turkey is also a great first step. And Jordan, I had the pleasure of going to Jordan. It's another wonderful, wonderful country. Yeah, you want to travel, just haven't been able to. That will change, inshallah. If you fix it in your mind, it will happen naturally. Remember that anything that a human being has ever done, they first did it in their mind, okay? So that's a really important teaching. I really don't talk about that usually until year 4, until we talk about Islamic mysticism in year 4, but I'll give you that one. That's my freebie for today. So anything that you do, you first did it in your mind, okay? Just remember that. So if you fix your mind on a thing, inshallah, it will happen. And that's why it's important to have an Islamic philosophy, because then the question is, what are your desires, okay? Then it becomes extremely important what your desires are. So if your desires are within the Shariat, okay, then any desire that you have that will manifest will automatically be within the Shariat, okay? Whereas if your mind starts to go all over the place and your desires start to go all over the place, then absolutely you will start to deviate from the path this way, this way, this way, and that way, and your life will become a mess. So the step toward manifestation in your mind is incredibly important. And then the step before, which is to take the niyat, if you will, to whatever I manifest in my life, or whatever I decide to focus my desire on through certain techniques that we will learn in year 4, inshallah. We will manifest them within Shariat, and they will support the cause of Islam, and they will support living in a karma-free state, okay? Living in a karma-free state, meaning I'm clean from karma, okay? So the way of Islam means to be clean from karma. That's the whole point of Shariat, okay? The whole point of Shariat is that you live a life that you become clean from karma. You don't create new karmic cycles, okay? For those of you who are a little bit familiar with other philosophies, other world philosophies, particularly from the Asian subcontinent, particularly yoga, for example. I happen to be a certified yoga teacher, by the way. That's another thing that I do. And if you're looped into the yogic philosophy, what they always talk about is karma and dharma, okay? So karma is your past catching up with you, if you will, in all ways: biological, genetic, historical, family, social, country, and then, of course, the small karma of your own silly actions that somehow catch up with you, okay? But all of the karma that happened before, like you're genetically a human being, you're a man or a woman, you're born in this country, you have these parents, you have this family, all of this karma has already reached you, and you were just in the crib crying your first tears, yeah? For being here in the dunya, yeah? So that's karma. And then, of course, your silly little actions that catch up with you in life, okay? Particularly when we start to get older and we have a clearer vision on life, and we've taken some life lessons with us, we see the effects of karma. Particularly if we look into the karmic cycles, we see the effects of karma. So the whole point of Shariat is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent 124,000 prophets to this world, and the last prophet, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to give us a blueprint or a guideline or a path, okay? The Shariat used to mean in Arabic the path to the water well. So you were in the desert and you were looking for a path to get to the water. Just imagine being in the desert and you don't know where the water is, okay? But those who have gone the path before you, they know exactly where the water is. And so they tell you, follow these stars and follow this path and you'll get to the water. And that's the term Shariat in its pure etymological sense, okay? Or hermeneutic sense, if you will, okay? We'll get into etymology of the Arabic language and hermeneutics in philosophy in years 2 and 3, particularly in the Hawza, inshallah. So Shariat means to live karma-free. So if I just have one wife and I'm not chasing a million women, or the wife has one husband and she's taking good care of her husband, if somehow I'm not taking money from riba, I'm not earning money from interest, if somehow I'm not eating food of an animal which has not been thoroughly drained of blood, yeah? If I'm somehow not stealing from anyone, if I'm being transparent in all my actions, a yogi would say, once my body and my mind and my emotions and my energy are all focused in one direction, namely in the direction of integrity and in the direction of Shariat, then you're going to be on the path of living a karma-free life, which means that at least you won't be creating new karmic cycles, okay? The Islamic way to say this is at least you won't be creating new sins or creating new problems for other people, that you hurt other people's feelings or somehow cause a negative impact in society, which catches up with you and which drags you down and which brings you into the dangers of someday entering Duzakh, entering Jahannam, a'udhu billah, entering the traps of shaitan, a'udhu billahi min shaitani rajim. So in other words, to live a conscious life following the path of Sharia is to free yourself of these karmic cycles and prepare yourself for death, okay? Prepare yourself to be lifted into the next level of existence or experience of this transitory existence, inshallah. Wallahu a'lam. So we have a comment here in the chat. Yeah, my mother talks about karma. Yeah, it's one thing to talk about karma and it's one thing to understand how it works, okay? So a lot of people talk about karma, but the important thing is to understand that, and this has been a wonderful yoga teacher has said this, karma is not necessarily what happens to you. Karma is how you react to what happens to you, okay? So let's repeat that again. So karma is not what happens to you, but karma is how do you react to what happens to you. So let's say a bad thing happens to you. You know, you can react in many different ways. You can react violently, or you can be quiet and suppress your emotions, or you can accept the situation and try to move on, okay? Which is probably the best way to do it, right? Neither do you react violently toward the person who's doing something bad, nor do you suppress the emotion inside of you, but you open yourself up, accept the situation, and find a path to move on, okay? So this is the important, and when we move on, we call it dharma, okay? This is the way of living life, without creating new karma. So karma-free lifestyle is called dharma, okay? Living the dharma, following the dharma. In Islam, we call it following the shariat, okay? And it's been very clearly laid out what is the shariat, okay? Nevertheless, because there are many questions on shariat, and also because we believe in creating, if you will, jannat dar dunya, so creating paradise on earth, in year 2, we will deeply examine usul al-fiqh, okay? So the Zaydi approach to Islamic jurisprudence, and all of the consequences associated to that. Not only in the legislative phase, meaning not only how do we create Islamic law according to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, according to the teachings of the Quran, according to the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt, alayhum assalam ajma'in, but also how do we judge properly then when certain situations actually arise in our lives, and how do we implement the corrective for those things that happen in our lives. So it's not just creating the law, but it's also the jurisprudence or the judicial side of the law. For those who are familiar with, you know, legislative branches, executive branches, judicial branches in politics, you'll see that Zaydi Islam, according to the teachings of Imam Razvi, has a very well mapped out system to cover all of these different areas of Islamic fiqh or Islamic jurisprudence. And we will go very deep in year 2. So for those of you, you may find year 1 to be somehow soft and somehow very light, but it's deceptively light, because now take these 10 principles and really apply them in your life. Okay, let's see who can do it. Yeah. So year 1 seems to be very easy, but it's hard to apply. Year 2 seems to be very difficult and it is challenging, but if you get through it, I promise you will be a very, very well-educated person in Islamic fiqh, regardless of your madhab. We've had, you know, Hanafi students, Ismaili students, of course, Zaydi students, Jafari students, and they all take benefit from our year 2 Islamic fiqh, usul al-fiqh class. And I hope very much that you also join us for year 2. Okay, that's what communists strive for, making this dunya a better place, if not ideal. Exactly. So whatever earthly philosophy you might follow, whether it's free market capitalism, whether it's, totalitarian communism, whether it's some kind of social democracy in the middle, what we should be aware of is that all of these political systems are expressions of a deeper desire to bring Jannat into the dunya, okay? To bring paradise onto earth. This is the correct and the beautiful intention of everyone who's practicing these kinds of philosophies. Now, what happens is that in any philosophy, or let's call it in any kind of, systematic approach to politics, particularly, or lifestyles, is that the only way to reach this level of Jannat in the outside is to first reach this level of Jannat on the inside, okay? So until you have the insan al-kamil, as it's been said, the perfect human being, okay, which of course is simply except for the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam ajma'in, who we consider to be ma'soom meaning free of sin or free of great error, okay? Apart from these, lovely, blessed individuals, most of us, are going to make a sin in our life. We're going to make a mistake. Yeah, we're going to create some level of karma, if you will, in our lives. And therefore, the capacity, or let's say, the most outward success of any of these modernist kind of approaches to creating societies is limited by the best individual in the society, okay? So the entire society cannot be better than the function of the best individual of the society, okay? So that's why all of these philosophies, have this limit, and that's why you really can't say one system is better than another. Capitalism is better than communism, or social democracy is better than totalitarianism. It all depends on how is the best person, and particularly the best person in authority with some kind of a power in that particular society. And that's why here in the Hawza, we are not married with any kind of particular philosophy, or we're not married with any kind of except Islamic philosophy, and we're not really married to these kind of modernist systems, whether you call it capitalism or communism or social democracy. We consider ourselves in a situation to be able to operate within all of those systems. At the same time, we belong to none of them, okay? So we are not because this is a spiritual path at the end of the day, and it's an individual path, just as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said that each individual will keep what they have earned and take it into the akhirat, inshallah, okay? So someone who was a Muslim in, let's say, communist Russia has the same shariat as someone who is Muslim in postmodern London, okay? So the shariat has not necessarily changed. What has changed are the outward circumstances and how to apply that sharia in the particular context. Wa Allahul a'lam. And I see another comment. Yeah, why Islamic societies have a lot of problems. People exist, says Jana. Islam is perfect, humans not so much. Exactly. That's exactly where we are on that, okay? And that's why we say we strive to first be the best individuals that we can. We know we can't be, insan al-kamil in that sense. It's very hard to achieve this, or we know we can never be ma'soom. Probably all of us at this age have maybe committed some kind of sin in our lifetime, so the best we can do is make tawbah, and make tawbah, and make tawbah, and ask, make istighfar from Allah for our sins of our past, and try to move on from that. And that's why the Sharia and we say in Islam, we say Sharia, Tariqa, Haqiqa, Ma'rifa, which means we start on the Shariat, we start by fixing ourselves and following the path of Shariat, and then if we're lucky, we find the so-called Tariqa, which is the path. Sometimes it can find its expression in a Sufi group, or in philosophy group, or having a sheikh or an ustad who will teach you. And then finally, when we are clean of all our inner guna or our inner sins, and Allah has blessed us with His light, we may be able to reach a level of so-called haqiqa in our lives, or truth, pure truth. And from that, we can achieve an even higher level, which is called ma'rifa, which means wisdom or deep irfaniyat, which we teach in year 4 of our Hawza. And this means not only the truth within, but also to create truth without, by being able to teach next generations about Islam. Wallahu a'lam. Okay, so this is the big background of our philosophy here in the Hawza, and particularly the philosophy of Sayyid Mehdi Imam Razvi alayhi salam. And I want to get through who Imam Razvi alayhi salam was, and then open the floor for any questions about Imam Razvi's life. And then I would say, after that question session, if you have any questions, then, and I really appreciate you guys are going in the chat. I found that to be very productive, because we can, pick up on your ideas and feedback, and we can go back and forth. And then I would start to outline the Hawza curriculum, and particularly year 1, principles of Islam, so you understand the expectations, and also so you have the opportunity to work together also as a team. Hopefully this team will come together during this year, and we'll be able to do good team exercises together, as it's an important part of graduating from this class and being able to take part in year 2, inshallah. So Sayyid Mehdi Imam Razvi alayhi salam was a contemporary Zaydi Imam. He was an Islamic philosopher and a Sufi mystic teacher from India. So as I mentioned, he was Zaydi in fiqh, Mu'tazila in kalam, or also Ishraqi in kalam, and he was a Chishti Sufi in irfaniyat. He was a direct descendant of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam through Imam Ali Raza alayhi salam, and he was further descended from Jalaluddin Sudposh Bukhari alayhi salam, who's a very famous Imam from Central Asia, whose family spread Islam as Zaydis, Jafaris, and Hanafi Sunnis, teaching Sharia fiqh and Sufism in Central Asia and what you can call Hindustan. Okay, so Jalaluddin Bukhari alayhi salam is a very important Imam and a very important Ustaz and Hazrat in the subcontinent. Okay, and to understand the complexity of Sheikh Bukhari alayhi salam is that you have Hanafi Muslims claiming to descend from Bukhari. You have Jafari Sufis claiming to descend from Bukhari. You have Zaydi Imams claiming to descend from Bukhari. Okay, so this shows you that Bukhari was such a powerful personality, and he indeed had 22 children, and they all spread Islam throughout different areas of Central Asia and the subcontinent. And Bukhari had such a powerful personality that he was above madhab. Okay, you can say he was one of the first post-madhab imams to teach Islam, even way back in the day when he taught. And he taught that philosophy and mysticism and truth are more important than categorizing people in madhab. And this is a very important legacy of Imam Jalaluddin Sudposh Bukhari alayhi salam. Okay, so you're welcome to study more about Sheikh Bukhari, inshallah alayhi salam. So Imam Razvi is born in 1930 in Bihar, India, to a wealthy Mughal family at the end of the British Empire. So imagine that partition had still not happened, and the Queen was still leading in India, and independence hadn't happened yet. Gandhi hadn't happened yet at that scale. Yeah. So Imam Razvi alayhi salam experienced a melting pot of 3 cultures: British Victorianism through Queen Victoria, Hindu Brahmanism, and of course, North Indian Islam, Shia Islam, particularly strongly influenced by Tasawwuf, okay, Sufism, mystical Islam. Okay, from the 1947 to the 50s, of course, partition happened in 1947, and the British left, but they didn't leave without a goodbye present to the subcontinent in the form of partition. So of course all the suffering of all the families that had to relocate then either to Pakistan or, well, at the time it was still called Greater Pakistan. Bangladesh had not yet consisted as a country, but let's say the areas of Eastern Pakistan and Western Pakistan, which are now today Bangladesh and Pakistan. And of course, all of the family relocations, and in Pakistan indeed is where Imam Razvi alayhi salam receives his university degree as a jurist, so as a fully fledged Sharia judge, in fact. Okay, and then in the 50s he has a career. He starts his career as a young Pakistani judge during the early years where Pakistani law is being created, and the role of Sharia in Pakistan is being debated. So not only is Imam Razvi alayhi salam a fully certified Sharia judge, but he's also, as a young man, being cooked in this kind of melting pot of a new nation being formed, new jurisprudence being built completely from scratch. Basically, what is jurisprudence? What is justice? What is truth? What is the role of Shariat in building this jurisprudence? Okay, so just imagine this unique perspective coming from British India and being able to take part in the creation of this young jurisprudential Pakistan. Okay. In the late 1950s, he meets a young German lady on the train in Pakistan who's a tourist, and they fall in love, and she converts to Islam, and they get married, and she accepts the name Khadija Hanum alayha salam, and they move to Hamburg, Germany, which is where Imam Razvi alayhi salam spends the rest of his life. So summarizing the rest is very difficult in a few bullet points, but we'll try. So from the 1950s to the 1990s, Imam Razvi alayhi salam is acting as a university teacher and researcher under Professor Dr. Rudolf Strothmann, who was the first German Orientalist to thoroughly research Zaydi and Ismaili faiths more than 120 years ago in Hamburg. So if you're looking for the earliest Western works on Zaydiya, then definitely look no further than Professor Rudolf Strothmann, albeit his works are still in German. So one thing that needs to be done is that they need to be translated into English. Desperately, they need to be translated into English so that everyone can have these great books of Rudolf Strothmann. But actually, Salim John was asking for some additional research material, and I know that I told you to deepen yourself in the Quran and to profound yourself in the Najul Balagha, which of course is definitely true. Yeah, I would say that to everyone in this class. This is your main kind of research content for this year. But Salim, because I know you speak German, I think maybe Jana also speaks German, I'm not sure. But definitely, if you get your hands on these old books, if you haven't yet, then I would greatly suggest that you find time to read. One book is called Das Kultus der Saiditen, and another book is called Das Staatsrecht der Saiditen. Okay, and I will drop these book recommendations in the chat afterwards. So what we're gonna do, by the way, is we're gonna build you a special messenger group just for this class, and it's going to be called Group Delta because you guys are the fourth group in our Hawza. It's the fourth year, so welcome aboard the fourth year, and you're going to be in the Delta group, and that's where we're going to post all kinds of links and chats and develop a special teamwork and group exercises specifically based for this year one class for your team. Okay. So I'll drop in there, the two books from Dr. Strothmann, who was, in the sense, the leading professor of Islam during this time in Hamburg. And Imam Razvi had a pleasure to study under him. And who also studied under him was Wilfert Madelung, who is a very famous Ismaili professor who unfortunately passed earlier this year. So Imam Razvi and Wilfert Madelung and Rudolf Strothmann were all basically in a room about 10 meters apart from each other at the University of Hamburg, if you can imagine this amazing amount of brain power and academic superiority in Islam based here in Hamburg, Germany. And that's why Shia Islam particularly, Zaydi Islam particularly, and also Ismaili Islam has always had a special place in the heart of Hamburg. This is a really interesting development, and it continues to this day in smaller forms, of course, through the Academy of World Religions, which Imam Razvi grounded, as we will see in a moment. So this is a really special thing we have here in Hamburg, Germany, and we're happy to continue this tradition, inshallah. So starting in 1962, the Great Blue Mosque in Hamburg is built, sponsored by Sayyid Marja Taqlid Hossein Burujardi alayhi salam from Iran, who is of course a 12er Shia, but he accepts Imam Razvi as one of the imams of the new mosque, and particularly the position that Imam Razvi gets, is as the director for interreligious dialogue, and he's also, of course, an imam for the mosque, and he's also teaching classes in the mosque. And so apart from his university activities, he was always very deeply integrated into the Blue Mosque in Hamburg. Now, remember that at that time, the revolution in Iran had not happened yet, okay? So this was during the time of the Shah, Mohammad Reza Shah. And in that time, Borujerdi, who was accepting of the Shah, so he did not believe in what is called Velayat al-Fiqh. He did not believe in, actually, Ruhollah Khomeini was his student, okay? So the student of Borujerdi was Ruhollah Khomeini. And for those who know a little bit about the history, Borujerdi was approached by Khomeini, and Khomeini asked him, can I do these political activities? What do you think of Velayat al-Fiqh? And Borujerdi said, you can't do it. I forbid it, okay? And he was asked why, and Borujerdi said, if the mullahs come to power, they will be 100 times more corrupt than the people who are already there, okay? And, well, it's anyone's judge whether that's true, whether that has come true today, okay? Wallahu a'lam, to be very diplomatic, wallahu a'lam, okay? So you can see the tension already then between Borujerdi and Khomeini, and you can say that Imam Razvi was a follower of Borujerdi in that sense, and he always believed in the separation of the Islamic State from the Islamic religion or from the polity of Islam. So, so very different from the Velayat al-Fiqh that Khomeini brought to Iran. In fact, you can say that Imam Ali Sistani, alayhi salam, who's based now in Najaf in Iraq, is almost like a brother or a cousin of Imam Razvi alayhi salam, because they both believed in having a transparent state and having transparent politics, but free from a particular faith or a particular direction, so that anyone could take part in the building of a particular nation state, and everyone's rights, minority rights, would be respected, okay? And yeah, you don't think highly of the current regime. You're not the only one. You're not the only one. Okay, Jannah and Sister Jannah. And so this leads us to 1987, where Imam Razvi alayhi salam actually publicly criticizes the fatwa of Ayatollah Khomeini against the writer Salman Rushdie. For those of you who are familiar with the history, Salman Rushdie wrote a book called The Satanic Verses, in which many people felt that he was, the writer Rushdie was insulting Aisha, being the wife of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I actually read the book. I found it very enjoyable, very deep actually in its message. I didn't feel that he insulted Aisha. I didn't feel that there was any really under the belt stuff that was going on there, but everyone has their own opinion. I encourage everyone to read the book. And of course, in that time, Khomeini had issued a fatwa against Rushdie, calling for his life, okay? And at that point, Rushdie had to go underground and basically literally flee for his life. And Imam Razvi actually criticized that fatwa. So he openly went to the presses and he criticized it. And there's a wonderful, this was after the revolution, of course, and there's a wonderful story of Imam Razvi where he actually calls Khomeini and tells him he's going to criticize Khomeini publicly, so that this doesn't come like some shock, but he calls him and he tells him, look, I don't agree with your fatwa, and I consider it to be my obligation as an imam of the Ahlul Bayt to openly criticize this, yeah? And Imam Khomeini answers and he says, if you believe that I'm incorrect with my fatwa, then it's your obligation to go into public and to criticize me. So in fact, Khomeini actually accepted that Imam Razvi would go and criticize him publicly, which he did. And he stated, he made his own kind of counter fatwa, if you will, stating why he believed that Salman Rushdie had the right of free speech within Islam and he had the right to present his opinion. And whoever didn't agree with it could discuss it on a calm and collected and respectful manner, just as it says in Quran, Surah 16, ayat 125, and I quote, discuss with them in the best of manners. Okay, so I'll drop that ayat also in the chat, inshallah. Okay, I see a comment in the chat. I'm going to jump in. I heard it's a good book from a purely literary point of view. Yeah, it is. I mean, I loved it. I mean, I love the writing, and it's not that I agreed with what he said in any way. I didn't agree with it. Being a Muslim, with his kind of final message in the book. You know, he's an atheist, and I happen to consider myself a Muslim. Only Allah knows our true identities, but within that, I consider myself a Muslim. And ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadur Rasulullah. But I don't believe that Rushdie deserved a death penalty for this, or somehow he didn't say anything that deserved. But it's up to everyone to read for themselves. Again, I encourage you to read it and form your own opinion. Wallahu a'lam. Okay. So in the 1990s, Imam Razvi creates the Hamburg Shura, which is a citywide community of all mosques and Islamic associations, working together to represent Islam toward the German state, which has been very successful to this point. It was the first shura of its kind within Germany and probably within Europe. And he also created the Academy of World Religions at the University of Hamburg, which is a special institute dedicated to hosting professors for research semesters from all over the world for short periods, usually 6 to 12 months, and teaching modules like Theravada Buddhism, or Hindu Tantrism, or Zaydi Shia Islam, or Alevism, or Orthodox Christianity, or from all over the world. And they have professorships in different religions, Kabbalah, Judaism, and so forth. And you'll find it's a really interesting kind of melting pot of all religions in the world. And his dream was that all religions could sit together in one place, and while each representative of the religion would, of course, represent their religion and stand by their religion, there could still be a dialogue in a philosophical and academic manner from which each party could hopefully profit, inshallah. And this academy continues to this day. So in the 2000s, he continues teaching privately in retirement, and every Thursday he has this so-called philosophische Runde, so his philosophical circle, and several private students. And in 2012, he has this 50-year, there's a 50-year anniversary of the Blue Mosque in Hamburg, which I also had the pleasure of attending. And he reminds us in his speech that his imam, he said, my imam was Sayyid Bujardi and not Ayatollah Khomeini. And he also accepted me as his last private master student, if you will. So I was able to go and visit him basically in the last year and a half of his life every Friday. And after prayer, I would go to his house, and we would drink tea together, and he would teach me all the teachings that he had that I could accept, let's say, that he prepared for me in Zaydi Islam and in Mu'tazila and Ishraqi Falsafiya and in Chishti Tasawwuf. Yeah, so I consider myself extremely blessed and privileged to have taken classes with Imam Razvi, alayhi salam. And in 2013, at the ripe age of 82 years, he passes away toward his next life, inshallah, in Akhirat, inshallah, in Jannat. May Allah Ta'ala be pleased with him and forgive any sins. So Imam Razvi alayhi salam enjoyed an illustrious academic career as a teacher, researcher, and community builder, speaking 5 languages fluently: Urdu, Persian, Arabic, German, and English. His very kind disposition was balanced by a fiery tongue when necessary, a diplomatic but biting sense of humor, and the broadest mind open to aql, meaning reason or wisdom, that I've ever had the privilege to encounter. This is something we'll talk about a lot this year. So we'll talk a lot about the role of al-aql, or reason, in Islam. Yeah, I have the pleasure to really teach this. Next class, we'll talk a lot about reason particularly, but it'll continue throughout this year particularly, but indeed throughout the 4 years of our Hawza, inshallah. So that he received me to be a student at all, I consider to be a huge blessing and an honor. Words cannot convey the true feeling of meeting your Imam, alayhi salam, and such an Imam as Imam Sayyid Razvi. But for any German readers here, or with a good translation application, here are a couple of biographical links. So I will share this syllabus with you in the chat, okay? So you will get this document, and you'll be able to click all the links and do as much research, as you can and as you'd like, so that you really get a background on who is Imam Razvi, particularly his teachings and his influence and his legacy, inshallah. Okay, so and again, I list some spiritual lineage here. We kind of talked about it a little bit, so I'll just skip this, but I encourage you to click here on these links and get a brighter picture. So a lot of these are actually Sayyids, and of course Imam Razvi himself is a Sayyid, but he says also, we Sayyids are very proud of our teachers who are not Sayyids. For example, in Yemen, there have been many Zaydi teachers who are not Sayyids by lineage. For example, Samawi was a very famous Zaydi teacher who was not a Sayyid, okay? And you can see here also, here's the picture of Imam Razvi. You can see the light emanating from his face, and it was like that, by the way, in life. If you met the guy, it was just like pure light in front of you, more light than flesh. So if you are interested in his influence in Hamburg and in the West, you know, you can go and check some other links like the Blue Mosque or the Academy of World Religions. A couple of books here in German that you can pick up, by the way, Salim John. More work for you, okay, since you asked. So more links, these in German language also. So again, in this case, we don't really have translations in English yet. This is something that I'd like to get to, inshallah, someday. But at the moment, I'm writing my own book on Imam Razvi alayhi salam and on his teachings, and I'll try to structure in the book everything that I teach you in the 4 years. I'll try to put it in the book somehow. So at the very least, if you buy the book and you go through the book, you will have an idea of what we're teaching in 4 years, inshallah. But of course, the Hawza is much better because as you're doing today, you're asking questions, you're chatting, you know, you're speaking with each other. Later, there will be team exercises, and the value of, you know, everyone teaching everyone, in a sense, bringing their own experiences into the chat is much higher than simply reading a book, okay? So that's why, that's the value of the Hawza, is really each other, okay? It's really all of you contributing to the Hawza, inshallah, okay? So before we go into some of his axioms, I wanted to ask you, do you have any questions or any comments on the life of Sayyid Mehdi Imam Razvi, maybe on his teachings, influences, anything you'd like to comment? I see that there's something in the chat. I have the German books, alhamdulillah, mashallah, mashallah, mashallah. Okay, that's great. So that's good. So I'm happy to hear that. So yeah, anyone, as I said, you know, German language is absolutely not a prerequisite for joining this. This entire curriculum is in English, okay? So with some Arabic and some Persian sprinkled in, but there's no need to learn. Of course, there's no need to learn German to join us. Yeah. So if no further questions, I'm looking. No hands up, no further questions. Okay, so I would just jump into some of Imam's very basic axioms. So Imam Razvi alayhi salam had this beautiful gift of, in a very simple way, condensing, you know, entire generations of wisdom, okay? So sometimes it's unbelievable, and I would choose for you to think about. In fact, why don't we make that the homework for this team exercise, is that you look at these axioms and you kind of talk about them with each other in the chat, as well as examining them for yourselves, meditating on them, if you will, sitting down with them and just letting them flow through you, and sit with them and be with them, because they're so powerful on their own that it's kind of a shame to kind of crunch them together in bullet points here on this in the syllabus for the class. Yeah, so I'm going to read them anyway, but I'd like you to understand the depth of these, both for yourselves and in the group chat. So we'll make that one part of the homework for next month, okay? And the first axiom is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a supra-ontological reality, and Islam is an experiential reality between Allah and yourself, okay? So this is a very deep thinking. What does supra-ontological mean? What is ontology? Ontology is the philosophical science of existence, okay? What is being? Okay, what does it mean to be? When we say to be, what does this mean? How did existence come to creation? Where is existence going? How is existence changing and transitioning? What are we becoming? What shall we finally be? All of this belongs to ontology. So the question, to be or not to be, okay? If you know Hamlet, to be or not to be, that is the question, okay? And that is indeed the question of ontology, okay? Is to be or not to be, okay? That's the science of ontology is to ponder this question deeply, yeah? And so Allah is a supra-ontological reality, means Allah is beyond being, okay? Allah is beyond non-being, okay? So just sit with that for, I don't know, the rest of your life or 5 minutes, okay? And try to make something of that, because this is a very profound thinking that's happening here, yeah? And Islam is an experiential reality between Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and yourself. This means that Islam is like a channel to reach this unbounded reality. As a human being, we are bounded by so many things. We talked about karma earlier today. We're bound by karma, but we can expand beyond our karma and even beyond our dharma by accepting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the experiential reality and letting go of our false identities, and accepting that, to drown in the ocean of the reality of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, so just that alone is worth a lifetime of pondering, if not the 5 minutes to dedicate within the next month. In the chat, please, amongst each other. Okay, read the Quran as though it were Allah ta'ala revealing it directly to you. Okay, so those who read the Quran and they have 5 volumes of tafsir next to them, and they don't read any ayat without reading 5 tafsir, okay, this is okay academically, but if you really want to experience the Quran as an experience, then it's important to try to read it as though Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala were communicating directly with you. Okay, so without any medium. So la ilaha illallah in that sense means without any medium. Okay, direct communication with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This means, in the best of cases, to try to read it in Arabic. Okay, so while I certainly don't expect you to learn German for this class, but the more you deepen yourself and immerse yourself in the Arabic language throughout the 4 years of this curriculum, obviously the better experience you're going to have in the Hawza, number 1, and number 2, the more deeply you can experience particularly the Quran. Okay, because of course the Quranic Arabic is very special Arabic, yeah, and it's a very unique Arabic, and it has a particular rhythm, and it has a particular sound, and it carries a particular nur, or a particular light. So I really highly encourage everyone. We don't have the resources, unfortunately, to teach Arabic full-time here, so I would ask you kindly to do your best to improve your particularly your Quranic Arabic skills during the course of this 4-year Hawza, yeah, inshallah. So read the Quran as though it were Allah speaking directly with you, or revealing the Quran directly to you. A third axiom is hadith are to be read through the lens of al-aql. Remember, we talked about al-aql, reason, okay? If a hadith resonates with reason, you may use it. And if it does not resonate with reason, you should discard it, okay? Now, this has profound implications for the study of hadith, okay? Whether on the Shia side or on the Sunni side, we have to remember that all of these madhahib, as we know them today, were constructed mainly during the Abbasid period of Islamic civilization, and they were constructed based on volumes of hadith that were compiled during the early days, particularly of the Abbasid kingdom. And whoever has studied, Abbasid colonial history is aware that the vision of the Abbasids of the time was to somehow unite and to unify their broad and expansive empire, and on the one hand, and on the other hand, also give themselves a kind of raison d'être, so like a reason for leading the Islamic nation, if you will, okay, or leading the Ummah through Islam, proclaiming themselves Caliph of Islam and all those things. So what happened during the time was that a lot of particularly Sunni hadith compilations emerged during the time of the Bani Abbasi or Bani Abbasiyan, and particularly Bukhari, Bukhari, Muslim, Dawood, Tirmidhi, and all those guys, they came during the time of Bani Abbasiyan. And what they were trying to do in the time of Abbasiyan was to counter the narrative of Bani Umayyah on the one hand, but without being destructive of the heroes of the emerging Ahlul Sunnah, okay? Now, this would change during different periods of Abbasid history. I'm sure you're aware of the Mihna and Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal being imprisoned and all those things that happened during certain periods of Abbasid history. I won't get into all that now. But this is the history of basically the first hadith compilations, and those that followed, mainly then on the side of Shia Islam, and particularly during the emergence of what was then called Twelver Shiism or Jafari Shiism, were kind of almost in many ways counter narratives or counter hadith, okay, which emerged also, many emerged during the time of Bani Abbasiyan or even thereafter in different parts of the Islamic kingdoms. So hadith itself, whether from the Sunni side or the Shia side, is an incredibly expansive discussion. But again, as I told you, Imam Razvi had this talent of reducing the most complex things into very, very simple axioms so that anyone could understand it. And what he basically says is nothing wrong with hadith. Nothing wrong with hadith, whether from Shia or from Sunni sources, nothing wrong. But they should meet the criteria of al-aql, okay? They must meet the criteria of reason. In other words, they should not contradict the Quran, okay, number one. But secondly, they should stand alone as something reasonable. It should not be something completely absurd, yeah? So to be provocative, for those who believe that a prophet would marry a 6-year-old girl, okay, that is, in the eyes of many, including myself, is simply absurd, okay? So a hadith which may be quantified 1,000 times and cross-checked and have the greatest isnad or chain of narrators and have the greatest be in 6 books and all of that, but if it's not, it doesn't pass the criteria of al-aql or of reason, okay, then don't waste your time with this hadith, yeah? On the other hand, as Imam Razvi used to say, if it only has one chain or only has, you know, one isnad, if you will, but it reaches the criteria of reason and aql, you're allowed to use it, okay? So we're not kind of Quran only guys here. We do accept hadith, absolutely, but they must meet the criteria of reason, okay? And we have to have this discussion on some level of the history of the compilations of hadith, particularly in the time of Bani Abbasiyan and thereafter, and how these hadith came to being, and how all these different madhahib afterwards started to flourish within the different Muslim empires, okay? But again, so this is another axiom. We have a couple of questions here or comments. My Arabic is atrocious. Yeah, there's some weird hadith out there. Yeah, so there's nothing atrocious at all. I mean, there's no, in language, there's no atrociousness. The bottom level is 0. Okay, so the bottom level is neutrality. So there's nothing below neutral. Okay, there's no such thing as my Arabic is bad. Okay, if your Arabic is something, it's better than nothing, yeah? So the base is always neutrality. And then you start to get better and better and better and better and better and better and better, okay? And it's up to you, of course, how you allot your time and schedule yourself to become more proficient in Arabic, okay? This is completely up to you how much time and energy you dedicate to this, inshallah. Okay, so number 4, for Islamic studies, you don't require to attend a university. What university did the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ attend? Sharpen your pencil and get to work. So this is a message for anyone who doesn't happen to have an academic background, that it's not an excuse to not learn about Islam, okay? So everyone who is able to read and write should be able to, especially in today's day and age, this is an important message for this kind of postmodern era where basically on the internet you can get any information you want, but unfortunately from 100 pieces of information, 99 of them will be rubbish, yeah? So it's very important, you know, in these kind of times, you don't have to attend university for Islamic studies at all. And in fact, Islamic studies as a curriculum may even be detrimental, because they might take you into prefabricated paths and directions of Islam, completely ignoring other prefabricated directions, but more importantly, ignoring the freedom of consciousness to expand, ignoring your right to expand freely and consciously into the entire ocean of Islam, okay? And develop your own synthesis of what Islam is and isn't, okay? To give you some concrete examples, I was in Turkey. I lived in Turkey for 2 years with my lovely wife, and I was very close to some of the universities there, some of the professors, and they would tell me when we went to coffee, we also believe that Ali had the haqq, yeah? So the haqq was with Imam Ali alayhi salam, but if we say this, we lose our jobs, yeah? So they were actually afraid to come out and say at the universities, because Turkey is a mainly Hanafi Sufi country, they were afraid to come out and say, the haqq is with Ali and Ali is with the haqq, as the famous hadith goes, yeah? So so attending university can actually prejudice you in a certain way to go in a certain direction, and it can actually be detrimental for your development of Islam, okay? So that's why the universities, if they teach Islam, they should teach it in a free and in a conscious and in an immersive manner, inshallah. And that's what we try to do here in the Hawza, is to teach in a free and a conscious and immersive manner, okay? So experience Islam directly every day by sharpening your perception of reality in every way. So Islam is everything and everywhere, okay? So Islam is everywhere, and everything means, how do I, somebody asked me at work for a cup of coffee, so I go and I get them a cup of coffee. I don't say, oh, this guy is 3 levels under me in the chain, of hierarchy. No, he asked me, he saw me going to the kitchen, he asked me, can you get me a cup of coffee? Yeah, okay, I'm gonna get him a cup of coffee, even if he's the worker of my worker, still he's gonna get a cup of coffee. You know what I mean? Like, this is Islam. And every day, the little things that we do, the little actions, breathing, watching our breath consciously, helping our family, taking care of our lovely wives and daughters and husbands and sons and parents, taking care of our family, forgiving, looking at nature and being aware of what's happening in nature, rising with the sunshine for our morning prayer, watching the sun go up after our morning prayer. These kind of things are blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us for free, okay? This is something you can get for free every day. You can't find it in your application. You can't find it on the internet. You won't find it in the Google chat. It's just to wake up in the morning, pray your morning prayer, and watch the sunrise. Okay, this is a free, immersive experience that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us every gosh darn day. And inshallah, to experience this beauty is something very special. So these are some axioms. Are there any questions or comments so far? If I don't see things in chats and if I don't see hands raising, I'm looking at Sohail. Nope, still okay. Then we're gonna go and proceed. Okay, so jumping from all that really, really deep stuff, and as I told you, let's make it that, we talk about these axioms a little bit in our chat, and anyone is free to share their own experiences, life experiences, or, reading in the Quran and connecting their life experiences with ayat, or even hadith, if you find good hadith, and those kind of things, yeah? So the general course structure is that, well, we used to do it with a team leader. I think I'm gonna step back from that, but a team presentation should happen at the beginning of every class. So what happens is that I give you a homework now, okay? And then basically you guys work on it in the chat, and I'll see the development of the material in the chat, how you guys are speaking with each other and conversing. And then at the beginning of the next class, at the end of the month, at the beginning of the next class, we'll take maybe 15-20 minutes and just speak about the homework, okay? So we'll speak about, for example, if we take the axioms, what were you able to glean from these particular axioms? Or maybe someone even disagrees with one of the axioms. Okay, so say why you disagree with it, okay? That's perfectly fine. So Imam Razvi used to say, I don't give you this teaching unless you criticize me, okay? This was another axiom of Imam Razvi alayhi salam. He would say, everything I teach you, I only teach you if you feel obliged to criticize me, okay, if I'm making a mistake. The direct opposite of most teachers who want to be treated like some kind of a semi-god or demigod, making themselves into taghut, and creating a level of shirk, which is actually the complete opposite of Islam, okay, which is why Imam Razvi said, I teach you what I know, but if you find a mistake, please feel free to criticize me. In fact, you're obligated to criticize it, is what he used to say, okay? So another axiom of Imam Razvi. So you might find something you don't like about these axioms, so please say. But otherwise, let's talk about the quality of the axiom, and then someone will present it. Maybe, I'll have all of you, basically, I'll have all of you maybe take 2 minutes and just explain some relationship you had to one of the axioms for the next class. The next step is that we go into the 10 principles based on the Usul ad-Din of Zaidi Islam. I would just say nowadays, the Usul ad-Din as taught by Imam Razvi, alayhi salam. And every class, a new and provocative principle will be presented, along with a short introduction and a Quranic ayat. Okay, and this will take 15 to 20 minutes. So I'll be presenting, basically the principle of the day, as we'll do in about 5 minutes, I guess. And then finally, dialogue regarding Islam is, and so, and that's maybe another 20 to 30 minutes. So that's when I kind of ask you guys, and I kind of, I want to hear from you guys, what do you think? When I say guys, I'm sorry, I mean ladies and gentlemen, so also the ladies, okay? We're now very balanced in this Hawza. So I want to hear from you, ladies and gentlemen. What do you think about this principle? How would you apply it in the contemporary world? How do you see it developing in Islam today? Okay. And in addition, a final thesis that can be handed in at course finalization around August 24, inshallah. So the idea is we start in September, the academic year, we end in August. And what we have at the end of every academic year is that we have a Hawza, a special class where everyone presents their final thesis. Okay. So around June, July is when we would start to get into dialogue about, okay, what final thesis could I do? And it's not going to be like a huge doctoral thesis. It's going to be maybe, let's say, 3 to 5 pages based on one of the principles. So, for example, today's principle, I'll tell you in a moment what it's going to be. And imagine that you really like this principle, or you really wanted to immerse yourself, do a deep dive into this principle. So you could, do some kind of Islamic investigative research into that particular principle in the Quran, in the Hadith, in the history, maybe with Irfaniyat or Sufism or philosophy, and write 3 to 5 pages and then present it in August. And then with that, having paid, the tuition fee, then you would get a digital certification of completion for that year, for year 1, okay? Of course, we ask you to participate in at least 10 of 12 classes, so you're excused from 2 classes. Now you've been here for the first class, so that means there are still 11 classes, so you're excused from 2 of 11 classes, but I hope that you make it to all the classes, because as I said, I think the main benefit is when everyone together participates and we all learn from each other and we have dialogue together, rather than me just teaching top down. Okay, so the difference between the madrasa of Sunni Islam and the Hawza of Shia Islam is that the madrasa tends to be top down, okay, whereas the Hawza is more like a circular form. Okay, so of course there will be a teacher like myself who's teaching some basic principles. Today I'm talking a lot because I'm teaching about Imam Razvi and the structure of the Hawza and so on. But basically in the future, I'll present maybe maximum 20 minutes and ask you all to kind of also come in with your questions and your dialogue and so on. So it's very important to, I would say, the more you participate, the more you get yourself from the Hawza. Okay, so it lives from you. All right. And so if you participate in 10 of 12 classes and in the team exercises that we'll be doing in the chats, and of course with the tuition and your final thesis, then you can get your certificate of completion for year 1, and then you're eligible to participate in year 2, which means Usul al-Fiqh according to Imam Razvi. So Islamic jurisprudence according to Imam Razvi. That's an intensive class. It's actually twice a month, so it's every 2nd week, and there's quite a bit of intensive own study expected in year 2. Okay, so basically put on your seatbelt for year 2. All right. But it's also a lot of fun because year 2, at the end of teaching the theory of Islamic jurisprudence, we will also pick a very provocative case study. Okay, like for example, is biogenetic engineering of human beings halal? Okay, something like this might be a question. Okay, or is basing a currency on digital standards, a world currency, a global currency, a digital currency, would it be halal? Okay, so those kind of questions we tackle in year 2. So I really encourage you to push through the challenging theory, which is, it's really like going to law school. Okay, it's like 1 year of law school. Okay, But if you get through it, I promise you, your picture of Islamic fiqh and jurisprudence will be completely changed, okay? And you'll be able to discuss with anyone, whether Sunni, Shia, Jafari, Hanafi, Maliki, doesn't matter. You'll be able to tackle all of them. I promise you that. All right, inshallah. So that's the advantage of passing this year and getting your completion certificate, okay? So that you can take year 2. And then, of course, year 3, Islamic philosophy, and year 4, Islamic mysticism, all right? So you can see that we build this program step by step. So you can't have the mysticism before you have the principles, okay? That's the message. Or you can't have the philosophy without having the jurisprudence. So there's a very methodical way that we're doing this ramp up in this Hawza, inshallah, okay? So I see some questions in the chat or some comments. I'd like to address them. Yeah, I love the idea of having the sunrise every day for free. It's absolutely true. You're lucky to see sunshine. In my locality, it's just buildings and pollution. Where are you living, Sohail John? Where are you living? Are you in London, or that almost sounds like London? Sorry to say that for anyone who's living in London. And Jana says it's very sunny here. Yeah. I mean, yeah, definitely. Let me see, where's my Zoom? There it is. Am I back in my chat? Where's my video? Where's my video? Okay, let's see where my video is. Somehow my video disappeared. I'll find you guys again. Let me stop the share. There we go. Okay. So Karachi. Okay. All right. So you're in Pakistan. That's great. I'm very happy you're with us, Sohail John. That's great. So we have people here from Australia, from Alberta, Canada, from Hamburg, Germany, and from Karachi. That is just great. That's how it should be. So let me close this for now, and let me see if I can share my screen again, and then we get back to the syllabus. There we go. Exactly. Yeah, so that's the advantages, as I said, of passing your year 1. So year 3 course not year 3. Point 3, course expectations. Yeah, to develop a vision of unified Islam through a contemporary Zaydi Mu'tazili Sufi lens. So this is just the path of Imam Razvi, but finally everyone has their own experiences. Okay, so some of you may be Hanafi, okay, or some of you may be 12ers, or some of you may be Malikis, or someone like me may consider themselves Zaydi in fiqh. I also consider myself similar to Imam Razvi, Ishraqi and Mu'tazili in Kalam or in philosophy, and I also practice Irfaniyat and Sufism, or say rather it finds me whether I like it or not. So this is definitely what we're looking for here, is to find this united vision of Islam. Okay, that's why we call ourselves the Unity Hawza. To learn and apply the 10 principles of Islam, to reflect critically on Islam both inside and outside our community, and inside of ourselves and outside of ourselves. And team groups for applying ijma to the 10 principles. So ijma means consensus. So it means to have a discussion first, because you can never have a consensus without first having a discussion, without first having a conversation, okay? And for those who are familiar with postmodern philosophy, a great postmodern philosopher called Gianni Vattimo unfortunately passed away this week, peace be upon him. And his main message was, for those who are interested in postmodern philosophy, his main message was that truth is a conversation, okay? And finding truth is based on conversation and discussion. And this leads to the principle of ijma in Islam, which means consensus, okay? Which the Sunni schools have generally limited to the imams of the 4 Sunni madhahib, and the Shia schools have limited to the imams of the Ahlul Bayt. But in reality, ijma as a philosophical concept follows us every step of the way. So we should never think, or let's say that it's a rare condition, that our aql, our level of reason, is somehow higher than if we band together with 4 or 5 other people and we all work together on the same problem, okay? It's 99 times out of 100 if you have, let's say you're doing a presentation for work, okay? Some of you are working and doing presentations, and you do the presentation by yourself and no one looks at it, okay? And then you present it the next day and people nail you with a million questions, okay? And you're kind of like, oh my goodness, why didn't I think of that while I was preparing the presentation? Okay, whereas on the other hand, let's say that you're developing a presentation in a group and you have 4 or 5 other people who are sharply looking at what you're doing, and you're also sharply looking at what they're doing, and you all create this presentation in consensus, just imagine how much better the presentation will be the next day when you go out and actually present the presentation, okay? So the quality of work is determined by being able to work together in a team and reaching a higher level of reason than simply your own. And this is the process of ijma, and this is what we talk about when we say that, as Gianni Vattimo, peace be upon him, said, truth is a conversation, okay? And we try to extend that in our so-called reconstructivist pedagogy here. So for those who are interested in the philosophy of teaching, reconstructivism is a movement that draws from the conversation between teacher and students much more than simply the top-down filtering of information, okay? So finding ijma on the 10 principles in the team chats, all right? Wonderful. So any questions, comments? I'm very happy to see that we've been German efficient doing the 1.5 hours that I usually like to teach my classes. It is now 3 minutes past the 1.5 hours. But if you have any questions and comments, I'd love to receive them now. As I said, I will create a group chat for us to do our homework. And I will also now, I think we still have enough time to go through the first principle. How are your energy levels? Shall we go for a first principle now, or would you like to wait till next month? How are people's time and energy? Go ahead and chat, or go ahead and open your mic and let's hear from you. I'm fine with doing it now, Sejana. Any other comments, questions? I'm happy to do it now. It's okay, that's great. We've got about 27 minutes, and then I'm actually starting year 3, Islamic philosophy. So what we'll do is, we'll do it. In fact, that's great. So I'm happy to hear from you. So I'll stop the sharing here for a second. We're gonna jump to, but so for everyone, the class is clear, like the structure and the expectations and the way the house is built. This is clear for everyone, yes? So there's no, we covered it, right? Of course, you can ask questions, and I'll put this syllabus in the chat, okay, afterward. But just if you have any questions now, you're welcome to ask. So let me see if I can add, this is P1. Let's open, which one is it? This is philosophy. This is P1. I'll just open the Word document. Okay. This is my Word document, since I can't really find the PDF. Okay, can you see the screen, my lovelies? Yes, okay, wonderful. So I'm gonna put this a little bit here to the side and make this a bit smaller. Yeah, so the first principle of Islam, according to Imam Razvi, and as I consider the most important, is Islam is humaneness, okay? Humaneness. How to say humaneness? It's a little bit difficult to say this in the English language. In German, it translates wonderfully as Islam ist Menschlichkeit, okay? And the new Arabic term that's kind of going around in postmodern philosophical circles, in Islamic philosophical circles, is insaniyat, okay? Insaniyat, which is a direct kind of translation, if you ask me. It's like the pizza, okay? The pizza from Italy used to be, you know, a really thin bread with just a little bit of tomato sauce and a little cheese. And then it went to Chicago and New York, and it became this huge, thick, you know, creation with all of this tomato sauce and cheese and all of these toppings, and huge, and basically came back to Italy. And now if you go to Italy for pizza, you'll get a much larger and more cheesy and tomatoey kind of pizza than you did maybe 100 years ago, yeah? And in this way, the term insaniyat has come back into Islamic philosophical language, having come from the English language tradition and term of humanitarianism or humanism, okay? Which, if you look it up, you know, you'll find humanist tradition, equality between genders, equality between races, freedom for all, you know, human rights for all, participative political processes such as democracy, and basically all the fruits of the tradition of enlightenment, but being integrated back into the Islamic context, is what is called insaniyat, okay? So Islam is insaniyat. What does it mean exactly? Another wonderful axiom of Imam Razvi alayhi salam is, he would say, Islam ist menschlich. Und was menschlich ist, muss vernünftig sein. Und was nicht vernünftig ist, kommt nicht von Gott. Okay? So what he would say, I know that Salim John understands, maybe John understands. So what this means is Islam is humaneness. It's simply being humane. Yeah, it's the act of being humane with human beings, but also with animals, with nature, with our entire environment. Okay, and being aware of being a human being means raising our level to a certain thing. You know, because we in English like to say, "Oh, I'm just a human," meaning like I make a lot of mistakes, but really being human is almost like being superhuman. So it's almost like, you know, you're reaching this incredibly high level of capacity that no other creature known to us has been able to reach. Okay, no other creation, no other makhluk, if you will, yeah, no other part of the creation has been able to reach this level of capacity, manifestation, mind power, energy power, will, you know, perception, consciousness. You know, find another creature that has the capacity to do this like a human being. So to fulfill all of this capacity at the same time, being humane, being kind to our lovely spouses and children and parents and family and neighbors and work colleagues, and at the same time producing good work and doing good deeds in society and taking care of the next generations is insaniyat. Okay, and so you know, we of course traditionally, and since more than 1,400 years ago, since the emergence of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Islam assumes that every human being has a basic rights, a certain human rights in society, and equally basic duties toward their society. Okay, so the Prophet Muhammad, really, when he came, he cleaned up with a lot of jahiliyyah. Okay, so for those who are familiar with the term jahiliyyah, is the age of ignorance. Okay, in the pagan Arabic societies where they would bury the baby daughters alive, and where, you know, a guy could have, you know, many unlimited wives and many slave girls and all this kind of jahiliyyah, yeah, all these kind of jahl acts, yeah, and of course worshiping all the different gods and all of that. So Islam, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam cleaned up with all of that, and he says this is insaniyat. Okay, this is humanitarianism, or this is humanism. Okay, and he lays this foundation for all of humanity, and it applies to every person, regardless of their religion, their worldview, their gender, their cultural origin, and even their own particular sense of identity. Okay, and from the perspective of Imam Razvi alayhi salam, so Islam contributes to a refined vision of humanism. So this vision of humanity is expressed both in the overarching principles of Islam and in its everyday actions. So the overarching principles of humanism in Islam may include the equality of all people before the Creator, which is certainly true. The fair distribution of wealth within society, for example, through the instruments of zakat and sadaqah and infaq and khums and all of these things, all of these different instruments to apply and distribute wealth properly in society. High quality respect for people, animals, and the environment. If you read the Quran, it's always a respect level, yeah? Even with Ya ayyuha qul ayyuha al-kafirun, okay? For those aware of Surah 109, Al-Kafirun, Qul ya ayyuha al-kafirun, and so on. And finally, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Lakum dinukum waliyad-din. Okay? So you're going to go your way, and I'm going to go my way. But we still have a complete level of respect for each other. It's not that I lost my respect in you as a person. It's just that you're going to go your way and make your experiences, and I'm going to go my way, and I'm going to make my experiences. Okay? But it's not to somehow look down on anyone, or because the thing of looking down is that someone is going to look down on you too. Okay? And neither should we accept that people look down on us, nor should we look down upon others. And that's why, again, lakum dinukum waliyad din, la ikraha fid din, there's no compulsion in religion, okay? So people are free to go how they want to go. قَدْ تَبَيَّنَ الرُّشْدُ مِنَ الْغَيِّ. So the path of right from wrong has been clearly identified. قَدْ تَبَيَّنَ الرُّشْدُ مِنَ الْغَيِّ, right? And that's why la ikraha fid din is followed by قَدْ تَبَيَّنَ الرُّشْدُ مِنَ الْغَيِّ, all right? So, of course, la ikraha fid din, and then people should follow the clear path, inshallah. Wallahu a'lam. So this is humanism. And finally, the Sohail is coming in and out, so he's coming back in. And finally, also the conscious respect for freedom of religion and expression for all people, and many more, as we discussed. So there's a comment in the chat. What a great society, sarcasm. Yeah. What society are you referring to there, Jana? If you want to type it, do you mean Islamic society, or do you mean our society now? Feel free to comment. Yeah, pre-Islamic Arabia, Jahiliyyah. Yeah, Jahiliyyah was a mess. But I tell you, if you look at now our contemporary Western society, we're kind of starting to trend in the same direction. Yeah, I don't want to say we're in the same direction. I don't want to say we're there yet, but we're starting to trend in the same direction. And if you want to know what I'm talking about sexuality. I'm talking about relationship with money. I'm talking about political issues. I'm talking about division between people based on race and all those clan kind of tribal kind of things. So it's really in many ways like we're heading in that direction. I don't want to say we're drowning in Jahiliyyat yet. I think that would be kind of too extreme now. But if we don't stop the nonsense that we're doing, just look at the music videos, that they're showing our kids. Yeah, for those of you who have children, you can't show them music videos today. You just can't, and there are definitely, dark messages being transmitted there, that I want to go into further here. But so you can see that we're starting to slip back into Jahiliyyah. So unfortunately, it's like that. Yeah, you have many choice words for modern society. Me too. But I have to say that there are a lot of positives about today's postmodern society. For example, if it weren't for today's postmodern society, I could not have become Muslim, because I'm from the West. I was born in Lima, Peru. And so I like to say I'm the most Western Muslim in any room, okay? Because I come from a long way to be here, yeah? So that could never have happened, even just 100 years ago, yeah? So I'm very blessed also. I feel very blessed and very somehow honored to be part of today's dunya, in today's world. I feel very privileged to be here, and I feel very privileged to have been allowed to accept Islam. So yeah, I think a lot of things are really bad, but a lot of things are also very good. And I think that the main kind of coherent factor in all of this is the level of individual responsibility that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given the individual to be responsible for their own spiritual well-being has gone up. Okay, so in other words, before you could say, oh, I'm in this culture, somehow I grew up here and I followed the laws of my family and I obeyed my parents, and any mistakes I made is because of all that karma, right? But in today's world, you have access to all the information, you have access to different translations of the Quran, you have access to different examples of the Hadith, different religions, different worldviews, different spiritual paths. And so in a sense, it's all on you, yeah? So every individual today has a much higher opportunity to kind of raise their game, okay? To raise their spiritual game at the same time. At the same time, it's also more responsibility. So it's opportunity also creates responsibility, okay? And I think that's really where we are today. As to the humaneness of everyday actions in Islam, for example, the very high position of the family within society. We're washing our hands and bodies several times a day, taking off our shoes before we enter a family home, multiple instruments of social equilibrium between rich and poor, and many more, okay? And I mean, you could just go through so many examples of what's called adab, which is good behavior in Islam, or tarbiyat, which is the building of good character in Islam, okay? To undermine, or somehow to underscore this humaneness, okay, this level of humaneness, all right? So or insaniyat, okay, this level of insaniyat. Islam is insaniyat, it's menschlichkeit, it's humanitarianism, all right? So we have this nice Quran verse as a starting point for exploration. It's not that it's the only, I would argue that the entire Quran is a work in humanitarianism, if you will, or in insaniyat, but we pick one Quran verse for every class for you to ponder over. And we honor the children of Adam alayhi salam, and we brought them over land and sea, and we provided them with valuable goods and raised their position from the rest of creation. Sadaqallahu al-Aliyyul Azim. So, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So, what he's saying, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this should be a capitalist, majestic we. So what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying in the Quran is we raise the level of humanity, okay? And we just talked about that in our generation, our level is being raised even more, yeah? And those who are somehow spiritually sensitive or energetically sensitive can sense this kind of energy level, especially since COVID. There's been a particular, let's say, uplifting or upheaval, if you will, in the energy of humanity. For those who are a little bit, let's say, intuitively sensitive, you may have noticed it. And there's more responsibility on the individual now. And the karmic cycles are getting shorter, okay? So what used to be a large, maybe generational karmic cycle can now manifest itself in the lifetime of one human being, or even within a certain portion of their life. So they can see, I did this action and then this happened, okay? Or I didn't do this action and so that happened. And people are more easily able to identify their own karmic cycles. So things are getting more compressed and the energy level is going up. And this is a very particular, you can say this constitutes where we are energetically at this point in the human experience, yeah, for those who are connected with that a little bit more innerly, spiritually. And that's why we have more responsibility now, but we also have more opportunity, inshallah. Wallahu a'lam. Any further questions, comments for today? Islam is insaniyat. This is a fantastic principle for a final thesis, by the way, but that will come later, yeah? So, but if any chats, comments, questions, I would take them now. And otherwise, I would say thank you so much. I hope that you enjoyed today's class. And it was a pleasure for me to welcome all of you. And I certainly hope to see you next time, the fourth Sunday of each month, everyone. Okay, so mark it please in your calendars. Fourth Sunday of each month, 2 p.m. European Central. That's 10 p.m. in Melbourne, and it's 6 a.m. in Alberta. And I'll always be sending you the links a few days in advance and reminding you about the class to come. And of course, as I said, I'll create the chat. I'll upload this video also, so you'll be able to get access to the video. I'll send you the syllabus for the introduction and also for principle year one. Principle number 1 in year 1, which is Islam is insaniyat. And I'll also give you guys the homework, you ladies and gentlemen, the homework of looking at the axioms of Imam Razvi and kind of just exchanging with each other in the chat about the different axioms. And I hope that you enjoyed today's class. I see there's one comment there. Let's check it out. Jazakallah khairan. This was very interesting and a great start to our Delta year of the Hawza. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm happy for the positive feedback. Thank you very much. And I would say let's all take a Fatiha, please, together to close our class. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdina as-siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladzina an'amta alaihim. Ghayril maghdubi alaihim waladdallin. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Okay. Thank you all very, very much. Thank you all very much. Thank you all very much. Have a wonderful month. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thanks a lot, Ustad. You're welcome. Salim.